If the international media is objective, it serves Hamas. If it just shows both sides, it serves Hamas. My argument is that the media can't just claim to bring both sides of the story. If you do that, you are only bringing one, Hamas' side.
That was the former Israeli Prime Minister Yair Lapid, who now serves as the leader of the opposition in Israel, telling journalists that if they cover the war between Israel and Gaza objectively, they will be serving Hamas.
That's cowardly and it's lazy. It's an insult to the victims, including the Palestinian victims. It's also an insult to the core idea of what journalism is. Believe me, I know. I was a journalist for 31 years.
That's the view of the former Prime Minister of Israel, also a journalist for most of his career. We decided to ask a few of the journalists that we work with for their thoughts on the matter. And today we spoke with Dmitry Babich. Dmitry is a journalist and translator who works with a subsidiary of RIA Novosti in Moscow. Dmitry, what do you think of that? This journalist of, he said, for 13 years, I think he said, is telling us that objectivity is, I guess it's not supposed to be one of the criteria for being a journalist.
Well, let's face the reality. I mean, I have been working with Western journalists as an interpreter for about 10 years in the former Soviet Union, not only in Russia. Also, I've been following the international press for 30 years, I think just about the same time as Mr. Lapid has been working in the media. He's 10 years older than me, but he quit journalism. I continue to do some journalism. At least I keep track of what's going on. And I can tell you that, unfortunately, I haven't seen objective journalism in all of these last 30 years. So I'm not even sure what he's talking about. I didn't live in the times of the World War II or the Spanish Civil War. So maybe Hemingway was objective when he reported on the Spanish War and when he wrote his, prose works about it. But all the reports in the Western media about the wars that took place since the Persian Gulf War, they were all heavily biased, and you could immediately tell when the conflict started whose side the journalists are going to be on. And it was usually the side taken also by the Western governments. Maybe Peter Arnett was the last one who somehow, he got to Baghdad when it was bombed in 1991, and I tried to listen to his reports. I was in the United States at the time. But as far as I know, soon after the United States started to press Iraq in the 90s, I think he quit the U.S. media. He worked for Al Arabi, and then he just disappeared.
Yeah.
So obviously, you cannot survive in the Western media if you are an objective journalist. So I'm not even. Since the thing that Mr. Lapid is talking about, since objective journalism right now in the world, if it exists in the places whose language I don't speak. In Russia, the so-called liberal journalism, the pro-Western journalism is heavily biased. It ignores 90% of the facts around itself. The government media in Russia, most of it follows a certain narrative, as we would say. It is not as heavily biased as the Western media, but I have to admit it. A lot of it is also more or less predictable. Even though one of the greatest, one of the most well-known Russian war reporters, he cracked up to be a friend of the editor-in-chief of the main opposition newspaper, Novaya Gazeta. And he was brave enough, that reporter, to congratulate the editor-in-chief of Novaya Gazeta when he got the Nobel Peace Prize. Which I think the editor did not deserve. He is my former boss, so I know what I'm talking about. But it is interesting that the person working for the government, that television reporter, he had the guts to congratulate Dmitry Muratov, who was the editor-in-chief of Novaya Gazeta, to congratulate him with that award. So I cannot imagine, it's simply unbelievable that someone from the New York Times or someone from the Washington Post, with a huge exception of Katrina Vanden Heuvel, right? Anyone but her, I cannot imagine them congratulating any Russian journalist from the not from the liberal media, not from the liberal part of it. It's just absolutely excluded. This guy or woman would die of fear before they would say that, you're a Russian guy, but you did a good job. Thanks for interviewing that person. Thanks for getting to that village. They will keep saying that we're all liars and that we don't report the truth. So when Mr. Yair Lapid says that objective journalism serves Hamas, for me it's like saying, okay, if extraterrestrials came here, we would have to forget about all our wars. The chance of seeing objective journalism on the situation in Gaza and in Israel, to my mind right now, is roughly the same as the chance of seeing extraterrestrials.
Thank you very much, Dmitry. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
For KPFK, I'm Don DeBar.